Good evening and welcome to The Script. I'm your host, Isaac Paul, and I have a very incredible guest with me today. I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. For those of you all that have not, ever been here before, I'll give you a quick rundown of what The Script is. The Script is the digital counterpart or the digital manifestation of the Tequila Tales. Now, what is the Tequila Tales? The Tequila Tales is a highly engaging and fully interactive discussion on love and relationships. I'm always certain to make certain that I let people know that what it is not is a panel discussion, and it's no shade to panels. But the reason that I say that is because with the Tequila Tales, our motto is with love, we all have a story to tell. And so, with panels, a lot of times you're going in and, what you're doing is you're listening to other experts or, other individuals kind of share what their viewpoints are. But what the Tequila Tales, our goal is to hear the authentic stories from the very attendees that are in the room. Now, the reason why my guest today is so incredibly special is because without this individual that is sitting next to me, the Tequila Tales would not be in Phoenix, Arizona right now. So without further ado, my tonight's guest is Kathy Williams, the owner of Onyx Gallery. So how are you doing this evening?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very good. So this is going to be a lot of fun because, I've got some great questions that I'm going to ask. One of the things that I always let people know also is that we are currently streaming this live. So for those of you all that, regardless of what platform you're watching it from, I think we're streaming on like 4 or 5 different channels. If you make a comment, I will not only be able to read it live, but I'll be able to post it and interact with you. It looks like we have one right now. Who is that? That is Gerard. What's going on, Gerard? See, so this is pretty cool. So if you all have any questions at all or any comments, feel free to chime in. It doesn't matter if you're the only one that's inside the room, because, I'll be able to see it directly and then you can interact and we can make this as fun as it can be. But this, like I said, is going to be a very engaging conversation because I am an artist and so are you, right? Yes. And so I think that is where we will begin. Let's begin with just kind of like letting the people know about not only yourself, but Onyx Gallery specifically, and just what makes this location, this venue so special.
So my husband and I came from Chicago. We moved here from Chicago in 2016.
Okay.
And we had the idea, well, we both retired, and then it was like, so we're just going to kind of, like travel. We're just going to do like the retiree thing. And then we got here, and within like 6 months, we found this place. We decided that wasn't really our thing. Both of us are very creative. Both of us like to move around and do things, and we're both very expressive. And so, my youngest son, actually, Ely, had a gallery in Chicago. He was very successful with it. And so this was originally going to be his space. And then part ways into it, he was like, no, I'm going to do something else. But we have the space, and I had fallen in love with the idea of giving a platform, to Phoenix artists and literally artists, from all over the country. And we did it. I mean, I don't know who we thought we were doing, who we were. I don't know if we knew, fully what we were getting ourselves into. But we're here, and it's a blast.
So what do you think inspired you to open the gallery?
So I come from a very creative family. My mother was a musician. I actually used to write, if you can believe this, I used to write songs as a teenager and work with some pretty amazing people. So just creativity is just like is the core of what my family is, right? But then, taking my kids to museums and to galleries and all of that, all of their lives, we brought up a whole new generation of creatives. But what really influenced me, I was very impressed by one particular, a few Chicago artists, but one in particular really kind of even inspired Ely to open his gallery. And if you're from Chicago, actually, you can be from anywhere in the world and possibly know of Gallery Gouchard. And they're in the Bronzeville neighborhood of Chicago. So when my kids were small, we'd do these little weekend excursions. And Adam Gouchard, who is an artist, I'd met him in my earlier profession, running a medical center. He came in, he's an artist, and we were chatting one day, and he, showed me some of his art. He had a showing coming up. My kids and I went. I bought a piece that night, and that was actually like the first original piece of art that I owned. And this was like in like '08, right? '08, '09 or something. And then from there, he's like, "Oh, if you like my stuff, you've got to go see my brother's gallery." Went to Gallery Gouchard and was blown away. I mean, blown away. Francis and Andre are amazing artists. And Chicago, if y'all ever have the chance, please find Gallery Gouchard. They are in the Bronzeville neighborhood. Their work is amazing. And this month, they're celebrating their 20th year anniversary.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
But they were like the first like major influence of me seeing what it looked like and seeing a couple doing it, them and the Niche Gallery.
Okay.
So again, in Chicago,
Niche, right? Yeah.
Listen, Phil Scott.
I'm big fans of both, because Gallery Gouchard, similar to and it's cool to know that they were part of your inspiration, in what you've built here, because, for anyone that's watching, especially any of our fans from Chicago, many people that are tapped into the art scene are very much aware of how prominent they are, and not only how beautiful their gallery is, but, they've always hosted, to me, what I've considered to be some very cutting edge events.
Very much.
And like I said, they're very tapped in, not only to the art community, but specifically the Black art community, right? Because in many cases, it's hard for Black artists to get the necessary exposure, especially in a city like Phoenix, right? Where we don't have the numbers that we do in Chicago. Like Gallery Gouchard, for people that are, tapped into the art scene, or people that are just kind of tapped into like arts and entertainment, I guess we could say, if we were to kind of broaden it out. Because I mean, you may not be someone that is big into like, purchasing paintings for your wall, but like I said, I've been to a lot of fly events there, right? So like, even if you were like, I mean, I can recall one time a lot of the sororities would use their space, when they were doing like their special events and things of that nature. And so their name became synonymous with kind of like that posh crowd.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I mean, for Chicago, like one of the most memorable events that I attended at Gallery Gouchard is that they do this white party. I don't know if they still do it annually, but when I first met them, they used to do this white party like in the summer. The who's who of Chicago would be there. I mean, so it was more than just the art.
Right.
It was the ambiance
and everything that art influences, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of the dope things about art
itself.
It's
lifestyle.
Yes, very, very much so lifestyle. That's probably a better way to articulate it. Now, one of the things that I'm curious about, though, right? Because, I just said a moment ago that in Chicago, we have a larger Black population than we have here in Phoenix, right? So, with that comes a lot of challenges. So what are some of the challenges that you faced in opening up a gallery and running a gallery here in Phoenix, Arizona?
Well, one of our initial challenges here was we were the only one, we were the only Black owned gallery existing in Phoenix for probably like 5 or 6 years. I mean, like I think in the last couple of years, more have popped up, which is great, because one thing that Vernon and I have always said is that we don't want to be the only. What we came here to do is just kind of like demonstrate that it can be done, so that, people see the example of it, creatives find a home, and people that just want to collect or just get into it, or whatever the case may be, that they see the example of it and know, okay, that's doable, and there is an audience for it in Phoenix.
Mhm.
And so one of the original challenges was really just getting people to accept that we are a legitimate gallery, Black owned here, showing art just like everybody else. And to take that seriously, but also in the area where we are, like physically, there are not a whole lot of, more so than when we first opened in like 2016, 17, there are not a whole lot of residents, Black residents in this area. And so our audience didn't start out as, people that look like us, so, and we're still growing that audience. We're still growing that Black audience. If I showed you pictures, from exhibits and that kind of thing earlier on, that's not what you see.
Okay. So, kind of leaning into that, what do you think are some of the things that kind of set you aside from the other galleries? I mean, beyond the obvious, right? Being Black. What would you say are some of the things that kind of sets Onyx apart from some of the other galleries that exist in this area?
So our style is more salon,
okay,
meaning that you come in and it's not just the art or whatever the exhibit is on the wall. We really design it so that the experience is that people can actually come in and sit and feel comfortable and feel comfortable. And really kind of connect with the art through being able to kind of sit back in the space. And so, again, it is more of a salon feel that encourages an experience that really encourages, like, conversations like we have, like we're having now, and not more of that kind of austere, all white walls, just kind of look and nod at the piece and sit and kind of contemplate quietly. We intentionally made it so that they're seating right there where the art is, so that people sit there, really can absorb it and still feel comfortable, kind of like, you having art on your walls at home, really having that experience of being able to connect personally.
Okay. And, I like that, right? Because so I one of the reasons why I like that description is because one of the things that I've always enjoyed about Honest Gallery, and I hate to say this because it's going to sound very cliche, but it really is a vibe. It really is. It's almost like the art, while it is front and center, it becomes a part of the entire experience.
Yeah.
So when you come in, a lot of times, as cool as galleries can be, I think that they can be a little I don't want to use the word pretentious, but maybe a little stuffy, a little cold, and maybe intentionally, right? Because maybe the goal is just for you to come in and be blown away by the art itself. And so everything else is always very muted. It looks clean, but it's very kind of sterile, versus when you come in here, it's warm, it's very inviting, it's very welcoming. And so the art, it accentuates everything else. It's almost like everything plays off of the art, and even the way that and I'm gonna give away one of your secrets. So one of the things that happens for anybody that's never been to the Tequila Tales, and even those of you all that are watching now that has, you may not have paid attention to this, right? But one of the coolest things about hosting the event here is that it's the first time that I've been able to consider a place like kind of our home base of operations that looks different every time that I walk in here, right? Because beyond all the furniture that you all have, the way that Kathy will redesign things, it's almost like you walk in and the entire place looks completely different, right? So it gives it, like, that in and of itself feels like art to me. How you will shift and redirect things, and it can totally create a different vibration in this room that the room can feel familiar, but it still feels new, it feels updated, and so that's kind of how some people are with their art. Like, some people will put a piece on the wall and it's just background, but then some people actually change out their pieces, or they'll move pieces around, because they recognize.
And I do.
Okay, so you're that person.
Yeah, I'm
okay.
that person.
Okay, so you're
I'm that person. I don't do that here. I do that at home.
Okay.
To the point where, like, Vernon has this joke. He's like, a person can hurt themselves coming in here in the middle of the night because, like, he's like one time he went out of town and he came back and I had changed everything,
Just
right?
redesigned
Just
everything.
everything. And he's like, you know what? Good thing it's daylight because I would have run over, I would have flipped over this chair. But, to your point, I'm like all about the touch and feels, right?
Okay.
And so I'm very conscious of the energy, that's in the room. And just like when you are, moving furniture around at your house, you're creating an energy with how things are placed, and you're kind of guiding your audience, you're kind of guiding your guests into what the feel of the event is. Even with our events, we always have our guests to come in and say, okay, what's the message? Like, what do you want your guests to feel when they walk in the door? And then we design the room around that.
That makes sense. Now, if Onyx Gallery were a person, how would you describe its personality?
Honestly, kind of like me.
Okay.
Right. And it's so funny because my kids, when I do something new, or even when we first opened and I sent, pictures to the kids, some of my little smart ass kids were like, Mom, it kind of feels like I'm in your living room, because I do have a very particular, kind of taste in that. I mean, however you, express yourself, be it music or poetry or whatever, a part of you by default, gets into that, right?
Okay.
It's kind of like, you can hear, you can hear a song by, like say the OJs, and just by virtue of the introduction, you kind of know who's going to start singing, right?
Right.
And so that's kind of how I think the gallery is. It's a lot of times, and I don't know if this is like vain of me or whatever, but just being very honest. A lot of times how it's set up when you come in depends on my mood.
Okay.
It could
and you're
be
a Cancer. So those moods shift a lot, right? For those of y'all that don't know, okay, if Cancers, the mood shifts.
But see,
that's
I'm all water, 100%. But I'm all water.
Okay.
I'm a Cancer sun, a Pisces moon, and a Scorpio rising.
Oh my goodness!
So
just a big old ball of emotion,
ebb and flow,
just
right?
Just vibes and energy.
Vibes
right?
and listen. It depends on the moon. Whatever the moon's doing,
right?
that's what it is.
Right. Because you would say it could either be smooth sailing or it could be a straight up and down tidal wave, right?
I mean, we can go from a puddle to tsunami. It just depends. Okay.
So let's talk about the future, right? While we're talking about Onyx, what are your big dreams for the next, let's say, 5 years, right? Like because you are a visionary, being an artist, you're always creating. So what do you see, or what are the plans for the next 5 years? So
immediately this year, that kind of goes into the next 5 years, is that on my vision board is different ways to incorporate the 7, classic, what they consider fine arts into what we do here. Excuse me. I want to be able to host different events and different platforms, actually, so that the poet has a stage, the dancer, the sculptor, even the architect. I want to be able to demonstrate all of the art, like every expression, all of the genres, and do it well, and do it in a way that not only honors Black culture, but what is quickly becoming Phoenix culture. Because Chicago in the arts doesn't feel like Phoenix in the arts, doesn't feel like, San Diego, doesn't feel like, what last year we went to Hawaii. Totally different ways, regionally, how things are expressed. So what we're really determined to do is become like a very integral part of what developing a signature Phoenix culture feels like.
Okay. And so now, from a gratuitous perspective, how has hosting events like the Tequila Tales kind of shaped the energy of Onyx Gallery?
So Tequila Tales being here, and was actually part of my original plan, because I had my eye on Tequila Tales before we were residents
Right.
Of Arizona. And so you remember when I posted, when I commented on your post and said to Vernon, we could do that at Onyx. It was just kind of, I was manifesting,
Right.
You being here. And then what happened, you walked in, you literally walked through our doors,
Right.
Months later. And so being able to host Tequila Tales really just brings in more of that creativity, the art of conversation, kind of thing. And I don't need to tell you, you do it so well.
Thank you.
So authentically, but it also, just kind of reflects, even how we go back and forth, ourselves. And so, it just dovetails right very neatly into what my original vision for this place was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now that we've gotten the fun questions out of the way, right now we can get a little spicy. Okay. We can get a little spicy because, one of the things that I think I'm kind of interested in kind of exploring is, things have been getting interesting lately as it relates to the political space, right? And it appears that things have gotten rather divisive, online. And I guess what I'm curious to know about is like how does Onyx art in like the gallery as well as even like art in general, because when you think about what art is and like the role that it plays, the value of art, inside of just our lives, what role do you think it plays in the future as we kind of navigate our way through this terrain?
I think I think it really just gives us that outlet of expression, because at the end of the day, that's what art is. A painting or a sculpt, a piece of sculpture or something like that. It's really just a physical manifestation of our thoughts, where we are at any given time. Like us, even how I design a room based on what I feel. Right. And so I think that I think that art will be one of those kind of outlets, specifically for, creatives, whether, it's in song, whether somebody's rapping about it or, doing a very heartfelt, poetry piece or a painting or whatever. I think it's going to be one of those, one of the last, and I say the last just based on how I see media outlets, kind of not being very genuine with how they're reporting and not being honest. Like 6 months ago, people were saying one thing, and now all of a sudden, because the new administration is coming, people are tamping down on a lot of their positions.
Right.
And so I think as creatives, how we carry our honest opinions forward is just going to be very key, because art is forever. Whether if it's a photo, if it's a recording, or whatever, we can look back 25 years from now,
right,
or just 5 years from now on the other side,
right,
and be able to see how we were feeling today.
And and so that's kind of interesting, right? Because I know the role that art has played up to this point, right? And I think sometimes I kind of question that. I don't know how familiar you are with, and I'm gonna get real. This is semi-current, but I don't know how tapped into the specifics of like something like the Drake versus Kendrick, battle that occurred last year. And that was such a interesting moment for me in hip hop artistic culture. And it's funny to still kind of watch it playing itself out
Mm-hmm.
online, because I really feel that battle was so much more than just the beats and the rhymes. It
Oh
was
yeah.
bigger than a typical battle, right?
Yeah.
It was almost like I hate to say David versus Goliath, because then
It
it
got
makes
deep.
one
It
seem,
it, it got deep.
it did, right?
Hmm.
And it exposed quite a few things about, I think, just culture in general, right? And kind of even what's starting to happen in hip hop, which is the same thing that I think has occurred in many other Black art forms as well, which is where, you know, um, the majority, which is white people here in America, they consume the culture
Hmm.
because it's kind of the thing that we it's kind of like our gift to the world. It's our gift to society. Typically, where people of color are, in larger numbers, is where you start to see culture
Hmm.
uh be created, right?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's a gift that adds so much value and so much color and life to the world, but it's the hardest thing for us to be able to capitalize off of, right? And what ends up occurring is that the people who are consuming it, the people that are monetizing it, ends up being the ones who control it, right? Because things follow in the realm of like where commerce goes, right? So like,
Hmm.
what are your thoughts on that as it relates to like the future of, I guess, just art in general? Like, because we're in a space where, I hate to say it, but it's almost like, you get tired of being the starving artist, but a lot of
Yeah.
times the best
And
art
I don't believe in that whole starving artist thing, but go ahead. I
okay.
don't believe in that.
Okay, so you
Not my
don't.
religion,
Okay, so you
not my
don't.
ministry.
Because
No.
I was gonna say that it almost seems like the best art is created out of like depravity, or like I didn't have this, so I'm forced to be creative, right? And oftentimes once somebody gets the money and they get the resources, you start to know, kind of like Mary J. Blige. People love Mary J. Blige when she going through some emotional issues,
Yeah.
right? When she going through something emotional, that's an issue. But then, when she's happy,
Happy Mary.
happy
Yeah.
Mary, people don't like Happy Mary as much, right?
You know what? I think so. A couple things with that. I think for one, um, people just kind of are more excited by a more salacious story, right?
Okay.
And I think that that's one of the reasons that we have the administration that we have,
Mm.
because people like a little, people like a little
A,
trash.
a
People
little
like
drama. They
a
like a
little
little drama,
drama. Yeah,
a little mess. Okay.
people just do. But then when it comes to art, and kind of like assigning value to it, I look at art and the way that it's kind of going from one population to another, kind of like gentrification.
Mm.
Okay. So, you know, you can look at like, say like a neighborhood in Chicago. You can take a neighborhood like Chatham, right?
Mm.
Beautiful old brownstones, a historic neighborhood and all of that. But if we don't appreciate it, it'll go to rot eventually. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then, nobody will invest and all of that. And then somebody will come driving through the neighborhood and they'll see the potential and they buy into it, but they buy it for cheap.
Mm.
Right.
Right.
And so now who do we get mad at? Do
Mm.
do we take ownership of the
Mm.
fact that
Okay.
we didn't take care of it when we had it
Mm.
and someone else saw our value before we did?
Okay. This is an interesting angle, right?
Right. And then bought into it, and then it was that investment that raised the price of the neighborhood. But see, the same thing goes for art. I'll give you a perfect example. Vernon and I were just talking about this yesterday. So I mentioned Adam Gouchard at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I bought I probably have like 5 pieces of his art, right? When I bought his art, I won't say the price, but it was very affordable at the time. If you go into Gallery Gouchard tonight, and I have one piece in particular that's from his 6 Degrees of Separation collection. Okay.
Okay.
I made a good investment, is what I can tell you.
Okay.
Okay. The art over the 12 years, I think, 12 or 13 years that I bought from when I bought that first piece of that collection has probably tripled or quadrupled in value. Now, I'm never going to sell that piece because Adam is a friend of mine,
Okay.
right? So it's just going to continue to appreciate. But you wonder how many people who saw his art at that time and was just kind of like, oh, pretty colors, and didn't appreciate what it was, didn't buy into it on the ground floor when they could have. And if you want to continue the analogy about real estate, it's like, if you go on like 75th and Cottage Grove, and there's like a vacant lot, and you just like, oh, look at that, it's all kinds of stuff out on it, and you don't buy it today, and then in 5 years you go and there's a condo building or something, or a parking lot, something sitting on it, who can you be mad at? I'd be mad at me because I have the money to go get that lot today.
Right.
And so that's how I kind of look at art, really. It's that. Another example is Phelan Booker. We have we have Phelan's exhibit here right now. When I first met Phelan 5 years ago, he was, he's a more mature artist now than he was then, but he was giving his work away. And I said, don't ever do that again. I will sell your art. Okay. Now, Phelan's art is very valuable. But guess who owns like 6 pieces of Phelan's art? I do.
Mm-hmm.
And in 5 years, who knows what it's going to be worth? But even right now, it's worth several times over what I paid for it back then. And so that's just my thing. Like, we have to see our own value, and we've got to stop waiting for someone to say, oh, that's a value, and wait for them to put their dollars on it before we know the value of what we offer.
And so I do agree with that. I do agree with that. I think what I'm trying to figure out is how do we protect not just art, but protect our state of mind, right? Because I guess what I'm getting at is, okay, because this is dual fold. On one level, like I said, it's that we've noticed in times past that when a person is hungry, they're creating from a different space, right? Like, and hunger can not necessarily physically hungry, but just like, I think about underground artists.
Mm-hmm.
You love that person's earlier work, but then the moment that they start to get more established, then all of a sudden it feels like they show up differently, right? Because it's hard to be hungry on a full stomach. And so there have been very few artists that I've seen, and I'm not just talking
that are like consistently like
that are consistent, and
mm-hmm.
those that are consistently at that level typically are tormented on some level, right? It's the Kanye, the person that's got all the money in the world.
It's the Michael Jackson, it's the Prince.
What I mean? Like
these are the people that
tormented internally, right? Like something,
but they're not
does
doing
not
it.
allow them to be settled,
right? But see, those are people that are artists for, just for the sake of expression. Like, they have a song in their head and they got to get the song out, or you have an image in your head and you're not going to be happy until that painting looks like the image that's in your head. Down to even, I'll bring it back to what I do. Vernon will tell you that it gets on his last nerve when we're setting something up and I continue to move the room around until it looks like what I want it to look like. But that's just what it is. Like, you have that vision in your head, or you have that sound, or you have those words, or whatever it is, and you're doing it for the sake of meeting your own personal goal. And it's not about trying to satisfy, the masses. Now, people come in and if they like what they see, sit down, and enjoy it. If you don't, I'm satisfied at the end of the day. And so I think that that's why you may have recording artists where people, perfect example, Andre 3000. Right.
Okay.
When he did that last, project.
The flute
and people were like, well, what the hell is that? But his whole goal was just to express it.
Right.
Like he got it out of his head and whatever. He didn't care.
Right.
Clearly it wasn't.
Did you listen to the flute
I heard
album?
a little bit. I heard a little bit. It wasn't for me.
Here's what's jacked up. Andre may be he may be number one. He's top 3 MCs for me of all time. I still ain't listened to that flute album, which I don't know what that means, right? Now I'm someone that might actually like it. I think I just realized that in the state of mind I'm in right now, I'm not in a flute state of mind.
You're not feeling
Trump coming in office. Flute is the last thing. Maybe at some point, but I feel like I need some war music. I need some We Gonna Be All Right. I need Kendrick to come out with another We Gonna Be All Right. You know what I mean?
Right.
But just I guess another angle of this particular conversation, because I've literally created merch on this. I'm not even gonna lie about this, because I've got this new slogan that I'm like, this is kind of my mantra that I have to remember, even in the space that I'm at with Tequila Tales, which is that the consumers don't control the culture. And that we have to remember that sometimes, right? Like, we have to remember that, it's okay to be compensated, for your expression, to be compensated for your art, but the consumers don't control the culture.
They don't, because they're consuming,
they're consuming.
It's like whatever plate
now
of
we're
food.
in this space, right?
Yeah.
Where people are like, because again, going back to like the Drake and the Kendrick argument, when the reason that was such an interesting battle, because we were looking at the intersection between like the artist versus like business, because anytime that someone wants to tell you about Drake being a better artist, and no shade to Drake, because I like a lot of his songs, but the argument for him is, that he sold more, he streams more, and I'm like, yeah, because he's more palatable to white people. Like black, white people ain't listening to We Gonna Be All Right. That was a song that was for us. You see what I'm saying? So it's like there's certain things that's gonna move you. There's certain things that's gonna touch you. The same way Fast and the Furious, I'm certain, made more money at the box office than say Scarface, or anything that's gonna win #1 movie in the Oscars is not gonna make as much as Fast 11. Right? But I'll be damned if Fast 11 could ever win an Oscar. So that means that on some level, we've already determined that what most people can hell, McDonald's sells more burgers than Five Guys. You know what I'm saying? But who do you think legitimately has the better burger? You know what I'm saying? So we can't allow commerce to dictate the culture, and so I understand that, but I think the drawback to that argument is that, I'm getting tired of seeing Black people have to take, the back seat of certain things, right? Because other people get an opportunity to capitalize, even on like social media. You see people take our dances, they do all they take the things that we create and make it more attention from it.
But see, I'm telling you, Isaac, my own personal theory. I think that a lot of what we do, a lot of our culture, we take for granted, right?
Okay.
Your average 18-month-old Black baby that can stand up and walk a little has rhythm. And you put music on and that baby's gonna start dancing, right? We take that for granted. I'm like, our rhythm, the way we talk. I just saw this thing not too long ago. I forget what podcast it was, but this Black woman asked this gay white man, why do gay white men kind of imitate Black women and our vernacular and our mannerisms and all of that? And he said, well, look at Black women. Right? He's like, what is there not to love? And what is there not to love? right?
Okay.
But then flip side is you have all these bros, on these other podcasts, talking about
Not the broadcast. I
right,
know you're not about to talk about
with the
broadcast.
shades and and the turn and the backwards baseball cap and all of that, trying
Mhm.
to convince Black women that our sass and how we talk and our neck movements and all of this stuff is something that we need to tone down. But then you have a whole other population,
Mm. Okay.
who's trying to imitate it.
Okay.
And so just because I don't see value, in maybe in some of um what's his name?
What are you talking about?
Is it
Oh yeah. You better stop it. Right.
just because, like, I may not know all the lyrics to
Oh, okay. Kendrick Lamar.
yeah,
Hmm.
doesn't take away the value of it,
Okay. Right.
right? But I conversely can't be mad if and we'll just use like generically, a Karen knows all the words, and then like, can I be mad because she's like, snapping to it and like reciting it, but Kathy don't know it?
Right. No,
That's all I'm saying.
see, okay. So I agree with you in terms of us needing to appreciate, right? And recognizing, I guess, the beauty in our culture. I guess what just gets
And
frustrating is
investing
we
in
just
it too.
okay now that part, but even in us investing, right? Because then we can go towards the Beyonce and Taylor Swift argument, right? And I get disgusted every time that someone compares these two women.
There's no
Shade
comparison though.
Taylor,
Right.
but like I tell people, like Beyonce literally can come out with an album, and every Black person in America could buy that album. And if Taylor Swift just got white women from the ages of 13 to 30, she's gonna outsell Beyonce. So I'm saying, like, being Black, and I think that's why early on, being Black and being an artist, there was such. Matter of fact, I just saw something recently with it. The Luther documentary. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, okay. It was really good, by the way.
Okay,
It
I
was
gotta
really
watch
good.
it.
But they were talking about his frustration inside of this space because of his desire to be recognized, and just how important it was for Black artists to cross over, right? Because the moment that you cross over, like, I think that honestly, when we see like Kanye and his antics are because he's willing. Now, this is his own personal decision, but he's willing to abandon his own people, to abandon his culture, because he recognizes that getting 10 to 15% of white culture will keep him way more paid and way richer than getting 80% of Black culture, just purely for the numbers, right? Because
And
they
if that's
represent
what's
70% of
important to
America.
him, if that's what's important to him in the moment, cool. But now, Kanye, don't try to come back to 87 and state and think that the hood is going to still see you as cool as you were back then, right? Because you may gain value in one area, but you're going to lose it in another area.
And that's true.
What I'm saying? Like you're going to lose it. And even like, using Beyonce, last people, they were up in arms because she put out, Cowboy Carter. Oh, she's not even country. First of all, the girl was born in Texas and actually has a Southern drawl.
And that the original Cowboys were Black people, but and so was country music. But I mean,
right. I mean,
now we're just
banjos, origin, and all of that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But to that point, for people that look like us and then be like, oh, what is she on, and blah 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 blah. She's being who she is, and so I just have to go back to how we value, ourselves. And what we say about us is going to kind of dictate how everybody else, takes it. If I'm putting down, something, if I'm picking it apart, I'm giving permission for everybody else to,
okay.
And so that's how we have to protect, our culture. I remember like 25 years ago when Brunsville, that neighborhood started to flip. And all of those homes, there are like 100-year homes, 100-year buildings and stuff in Bronzeville, right? When they first started to like reinvest in it, it was Black people that were buying those homes, Black people that were like opening businesses. Everybody else wasn't going to Bronzeville yet, right? Originally, because remember, parts of what we call Bronzeville was like the low end, and nobody was going there.
So okay, because now you're going into a different area, and I understand and respect the point that you are making in terms of us needing to recognize and appreciate like our own value,
what we're bringing to the table, and not needing like somebody else to co-sign it. Right. So but and I also get your point about like the numbers and how just the actual value raises if you have 10 million people instantly buying product or merch or whatever, as opposed to your designated kind of audience, right?
All right, but
so I get that
I guess
part,
I guess where I wanted to kind of pivot slightly is because I do agree with you, and I think that with where things are moving, right? I'm trying to think, because this isn't really a question, but it's more of like I'm curious to get your take on it. How do I say this? Because I do think that there is going to be a need for us to not only recognize our value, but sometimes when I see us online, it's a lot of infighting,
and that's kind of where I was going with that.
Right. And I don't expect us to be a monolith. I don't think that we need to all agree on one accord, but I am wondering, what is it going to take before we start to see one another as community again, right? Or is it not about seeing one another as community? Is it about establishing some baseline so that I can recognize who is a part of my community, right? Because like, for instance, with and I hate to get political, but sometimes, I mean, it is.
My mind is going there too.
Right.
Yeah.
There are some people who don't identify with the community. And for those individuals, I want to be able to give them permission to link up with whoever it is that you feel comfortable with, right? You should not feel, because some people, to be quite frank, are not a part of our community, right? Like, they didn't grow up amongst Black people. They don't identify with us. They see themselves as other. They honestly identify more with white people. And so, while we may look at it sometimes and say, oh, that's ridiculous because, they see you as such and such and such. No, but look, if that's where you feel comfortable, then that's where honestly you need to be, because you don't need to be over here with us and be a Judas. You don't need to be over here with us and secretly you see yourself as inferior. You know what I'm saying? Because you kind of want to be like them, and I'm trying not to make this a us versus them type of thing, because I really do believe that the same way we got some bad seats over here, they got some good seats over there, right? So I mean, I know that the conversation can't really be had in a binary way, right? But it does feel like things are being polarized, and sometimes you do have to pick a side, right? It's very hard to walk in the middle nowadays.
I don't think there's such thing like right now. I don't think there is truly a middle. Just by virtue of
it's almost like they've erased it. Even when you try to be in the middle, even when you try to be sensible, it's like if one side is ridiculous, that you can genuinely, there is no middle at this point, right?
And that's what I mean, Isaac. I don't think that there is a genuine middle right now. You're either for the BS, like you can see a way to willingly accept the terms of the whole 2025 or America First or whatever they're calling it, and the detriments that that's going to mean to people of color and whatever other communities, right? You can either accept that just on its face, because you can't do both,
right?
You can't do both. I saw this conversation where this Asian guy said, I want to say that he was Chinese, But he made the point of Asians have to admit that where they are now, economically and even socially, in America, was done on the backs of Black people and the civil rights movement. And he just made this argument that were it not for us initiating, like the whole fight about civil rights and the right to do this and the right to be wherever and all of that, they couldn't have come and then had the access that they have now if we hadn't initiated the fight. Because I'm gonna get a little like historically nerdy for a second, but like if you think about like the Japanese internment camps and all of that, how deep do you have to go back to that time to find any kind of Japanese or other Asian freedom fighters who gain, any kind of like, foothold and, socially or whatever for those people? I mean, even here in Phoenix, on one side of Grand, was considered one,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? So his point was Asians cannot honestly say, oh, we got this access on our own, because they didn't. Just like women across America only got a lot of the rights and all of that, with voting and everything else because of the work that Black people were doing. The gay community, same thing. A lot of the access and all of the things that they were able to fight for in terms of equality and all of that, it's because of the work that we did. Like their right to to marry same sex and all of that comes on the back of how Black people fought to be able to have interracial relationships. Like it all has that, kind of foundation. And that's just what America is.
Right.
But
it feels like, I don't know, it's going to be interesting to watch how things play out in the next, honestly, couple of months, weeks, couple of months, couple of years, if America can get a couple more seasons in. Because like, I don't know if you saw, recently what it's a couple of things raising a stink online, but where one of the senators' husbands, he was being sworn in and he refused to shake Kamala's hand.
Was hilarious to me. Was hilarious.
You say that was hilarious.
But you know why it was funny to me? Because all he did was mimic Trump's behavior at that debate. Remember, he didn't want to shake her hand. She went over to him, right? And so this is just, I mean, a lot of Black women, that's just like almost like you can walk into a grocery store and have people who don't want to acknowledge you. So that kind of behavior it's so ignorant.
I saw a lot of people online, and a lot of people were commenting and giving Kamala a lot of credit for how she handled herself, grace under fire.
Yeah.
And on one level, I acknowledge that. And I can appreciate a person that can, in the face of, frustrating moments, they can rise above them. But like I told my wife, I was like, I would have been comfortable if she had done something a little bit more visibly dismissive. Like I'm in a more combative state right now. I'm gonna be honest. Like listen, I'm trying to
see now.
I want to be on my Michelle Obama, go right, exactly.
No.
I wish she had just looked at him and been like,
but and then,
like I wish she had done something. Like I'm ready to be more antagonistic at this point. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
But see, also had she done that, then it would have been like, see, she's not so this, she's not so that.
I don't even care no more.
Oh no,
I don't even care no more. I'm about done with this.
I'm with you,
trying to perform.
But at her position,
but the president grabs pussy. Like I don't like. Why do we care anymore? I'm trying to figure out when do we
permission.
Stop.
He's been given permission for that, Isaac. Like at the point where people can try to justify that, at this point, I mean, I off the top of my head,
And they
I
are
can
trying to
come down.
justify it. I
Right,
happen to see
right.
in the comment
Yeah.
section, they're like, oh
They
well,
they bend
Nancy
over
Pelosi
backwards.
tore up the State of the Union.
They
Really, this
bend
the
over
same thing?
backwards to try to compare and validate that behavior. I mean, look at Matt Getz.
Right.
I mean, come on.
Right.
Come on. Let's be for real. Okay. So you have someone like Matt Getz, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you have a Jesse Jackson Jr. who went to jail. Okay. Actually served time for an incomparable offense. Not even trying to say, and I'm not even trying to like make what he did right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to compare it, right, being investigated for what they're saying he did compared to a couple of $100,000,
right.
So then what we have to understand is that no one's ever going to admit to, like, on that side, that's part of their game plan, right? While we're over here like still trying to like do what's right.
Mm-hmm.
They've abandoned that. They don't care about that. They like there are no guardrails. Okay, there are no guardrails up for that. Look how many, federal offenses, charges, all of these different, people have gone to jail. People are still awaiting trial. You have all of those January 6th people that they're also trying to like somehow validate that behavior.
They about
but
to get
then you let one of us have our music up, and then you got a Karen, like knocking on your window.
I've been seeing people online like kind of like, oh, you see everybody January 6th, and kind of almost not necessarily congratulating the Democrats for not raising a stink, but just showing, see you guys, this is how appropriate. And I'm like, y'all,
they don't
why
care.
Are we? And if they don't care, why are we still trying to, one, make the argument, right? Mm-hmm. Because we are literally talking to ourselves.
Yeah.
But then two, like, you can't necessarily try to beat them at their game of ignorance. But my thing is, it's time for us to stop pretending, right? It's time for us to stop doing these emblematic, nonsensical, displays of civility to show people that, hey, you guys, see, this is the way that you should be. And they don't care. They know they're cheating. They know they're cheating. They're going to continue to change the rules.
Look at the gerrymandering, that has happened.
So it's like, why do we keep trying to make the argument? And I think that's why it's going to be interesting to see how the future, especially like politically, moves, because I'm more on some Jasmine Crockett type of energy.
Me too.
See, I want to see more of that type of energy. Like, now I do understand, to your point, like that, unfortunately, that does place a bigger target on us than it does them, because of, one, the fact that they are the majority, and two, they've always been, as much as they want to talk about snowflakes.
And like, I'm high key not even convinced that they're majority, but that's another story.
Shit.
And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why.
You about to go?
I'll tell you why. Right here in Arizona.
Okay.
Do you know that a lot of Mexican people, on their birth certificate, it lists them as white? Yeah. And they can't even go back and undo it, or are having them. I know people personally. That's why I had never heard of this until a couple of years ago. In talking to other artists of color, right? And that's the thing. So those are people who are counted under that number, right? Now, clearly they're not white, and some of them may want to be, but they're not. And when they try to go get jobs or try to get housed and try to do some other kind of day-to-day things, they're reminded that they aren't. But how they're counted is something different.
Okay, so you mean from like a population perspective,
right? Exactly. And so then that's what makes it majority. I mean, they pulled this trick even in Texas, by using inmates. So they, so of course, a lot of prison facilities are like out in the rural areas.
Mhm.
Well, guess how a lot of those rural areas are now getting like funding for infrastructure and all of that, because those prisoners of color, mostly in those rural prisons, are counted in the census for that location, not for where they came from. So, if Uncle Joe is
Mhm.
like really from Dallas, they're not counting him in Dallas. They're counting him way out wherever, he's being currently housed.
Okay.
And so, and I mean, like, to get political, that's how a lot of that,
Mhm.
is happening. And so, and that is why even those areas even got like a new congressperson,
Mhm.
the rural areas where they're counting all of these Black and brown lives that are locked up. Yeah.
Well, listen, all I'm
And
gonna say
Jasmine
is
Crockett told me that.
all I'm gonna say is that eggs are not dropping. The price of eggs or gas is not gonna drop. But
Oh, baby,
nonetheless,
it's about to go higher.
It's gonna go higher, and it's gonna be fascinating to see how people deal with that. But as we round this discussion out, I want to hop back into art, but now we're gonna make a bridge between like art and like relationships, right?
Mhm.
So this is a unique question, but I'm curious to get your perspective on it. Do you think artists are better at expressing love through their work than the average person is in real life?
I do.
Hmm.
I
Okay,
do.
why is that?
I do, because they give themselves permission to.
Okay.
And so, whatever the art form is, they have another avenue of expression, as opposed to just having to be like face to face honest and say, oh baby, I really love you, or that hurt me, or whatever.
Mhm.
Artists can say it in a song, they can say it in a rap, they can say it in poetry, they can paint it. There are so many different ways to be able to get that out,
Hmm.
right? And they can express it in a way that doesn't necessarily have to be combative to the person that they love. Because see, now it's expressed, it's out, I said it,
Mm. Mhm.
and I can go on about my business, or, be able to pull that the way that I express it into a conversation, whatever. But you're not holding all of that in.
Mm. Okay, that was good. Okay. If a relationship were a piece of art, would you say it's more important, or what would you say is more important? The process of creating it or the finished product?
Okay, now that's kind of hard, because just because, like, I'm
I was like,
thinking,
I'm gonna stump you on one of these.
oh
joints.
yeah, oh yeah. Well,
You jump in like you know the answer on most of them. I wanted to see how you was gonna handle this one, because I don't know how I feel about this particular one, right?
so you know what, I'll go back to, like, my days of, being a lyricist, right?
Mm-hmm.
The original words can kind of like come to you, and like, like you got a melody and it sounds good
Mm-hmm.
until you write it down or you start singing it out loud, and you realize that like maybe it's too many syllables. Oh, that word really doesn't go with the way this melody is going, So initially, at that like conception stage, and even as you develop it, you're like working it out, kind of like when you first met somebody, it was some stuff that you would take because it was new.
Mm-hmm.
You were like, okay, this is gonna get better, we're gonna work on that, as opposed to where you are now, like 15 or 20 years, into it. So that's my answer for that. So I don't think you really stumped me.
Right.
But...
Okay. Now, from my perspective, I think it's funny because when I was younger, I used to always say that it's funny. I used to think that the end justified the means. That was a part of my like mentality, because I was making so many sacrifices, on the path. I felt like once I reached this destination, all the hardship, all the, the dark moments, the trials and tribulations, once I reach this destination, everybody will understand it. And then that's when you're celebrated, right? But, being at my age now, still very much inside the process, as well as the recognition that the process never really ends until you pass away.
Yeah.
I think I'm more of a process person now, right? Like where, I understand that there really never is a finished product, you know, and like death is the finished product, you know. And so while you're alive, you are on some level going through, you know, the process or
Yeah,
journey.
and life is like continuous
It's
expression,
continuous,
continuous creativity.
right?
It's never changing. And then back to, like your question, it's like, I know, like a lot of artists, will like look at a finished piece and it's like, man, you know what? I probably could have put like a little more blue there, or maybe should I have made it bigger? Or like, like they can step back and see, once it's finished, ways that they could have, improved it or done, something. So like, that finished piece.
In that regard. I'm a little different in that regard. Like I am the person that I say I hate it until I love it. Right. It's like I hate every piece of what it is that I'm doing while I'm creating something, because a lot of times while I'm creating it, like it's like I go in with a vision. It might not be a crystal clear vision of how it's going to look, but it's always a feeling,
Yeah.
you know, or a recognition. I'll know when I've arrived at the destination.
Right.
But while I'm putting it together, it literally feels chaotic until I make some magical switch. And then all of a sudden it starts to come into form, and like, ooh. And then at that point, now I'm just perfecting it. And then by the time I feel like it's done, I'm normally like, all right, yeah, I did that, because
but
I
see,
think
as
because
a
I'm
Virgo,
aware of
with the like,
turmoil.
how,
Yeah.
how like specific and how,
Okay.
like
Yes.
like
Yes.
you guys are like really, really willing to get like into the tedious details of it until it fits that picture.
And I have to know when to stop.
Right.
Because to your point, you can obsess over something in trying to perfect it. And that is one of the things I think I've grown at, is just understanding that it's not about perfection, but it is about meeting your standard, right? It's about understanding that you have a standard and recognizing when you've crossed, that threshold where it's like, okay, I feel comfortable with this, right? Because I do think that there are times where we're searching for perfection, and that could be an excuse, right? Like a lot of times your perfectionism is nothing more than an excuse for
just to like keep delaying, the completion,
like trying to cover up some internalized feeling of inadequacy, where it's like, I could just make, if I can make this a little more perfect, then maybe it won't be rejected, right? And you have to recognize, when it comes to art, that sometimes and I think that that's what I love about art, is that the imperfection is the beauty, right?
It is.
Like I remember there was this one time I'm gonna call him my photographer. It's one of my closest friends. He's in Atlanta, Marcus. And, he used to take all my pictures back then. He would take pictures anytime that we would have events. And I remember I was in Chicago when I first moved back to Chicago. And I don't even know what compelled me to do this. I had this little cheap ass camera that I set up on the edge of my couch. And I had on some outfit. And, I did one of them pictures that people, they look off to the side. Ain't nobody looking. I ain't looking at nothing. But, I took, and so I like the picture. I like the outfit. I like the hat. I had on the fedora when them shits first, reemerged and people was rocking them heavy. And I saw the picture and I was like, oh, this picture is dope. But when I was sitting on the couch, I was like, damn, I got that big ass pillow with that elephant like sitting in the background. How come I didn't move that? And I didn't like it. So I was like, all right, I got to do something about this. So I just started doing all kinds of things where I like separated me from the background. I created like a Gaussian blur and just did a bunch of different things to it that made the shit look hella futuristic. I added some it was a low resolution camera, so I had to add some noise to it, made it a little gritty. Everybody loved this shit. He loved it. He was like, yo, okay, so you rocking with new photographers now? I was like, no, bro. That was a cheap ass camera. I had to, you know what I mean? So I laughed because I was like, it was a cheap ass camera. I had to make it black and white because the color was dingy. It was grainy, so I had to add, noise. It was like all of these things that I had to do to cover up my perceived limitations. But all of these things that I was doing was making the picture appear more like artistic and more beautiful. So it started resonating with people. And I was like, damn, this is almost like a metaphor for life on a level, right?
I
Like
was
we've
literally
got
thinking
these
that. Yeah.
shortcomings
Hmm.
that we know about, and we're doing all of these things, hopping through these hoops to either, you know, sidestep our obstacles or cover up our limitations. Meanwhile, that's actually the seasoning or the flavor that
Hmm.
goes into whatever this thing is that we create that people fall in love with. And I've heard other artists talk about that, like how, you know, all that gritty sound that everybody loved. It was like I was
Yeah.
recording on a cheap ass microphone and I had to turn up the reverb to, you know, cover out
Hmm.
the fact that I wasn't recording in a booth and I couldn't
Yeah.
get like a crisp sound, but that gritty sound ended up becoming like their
Part of
identifying
the, yeah.
characteristic. And I was just like, damn, that's one of the things that I love about art is that it's complete and it's finished when you say it's finished because of the fact that it's objective. You know what I'm
It
saying?
is.
You know,
But
or
I'll
subjective. You know,
right.
like each person that's looking at it,
Whoever.
like whoever looks at it, it's like, how do you feel about this? It don't. I
But
can
see,
think
to
it's
me,
trash. You can think
right,
it's treasure.
it's something else.
We're
But
both right.
right, but it kind of brings us back around to one of your earlier questions about like like how things are valued within the culture and outside of the culture, and how I was saying, like, like
Right,
we take
right.
certain things for granted.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for other people, like, it's brand new.
Mm.
you know
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, uh, you know, like snapping or clapping or whatever on the one, like we've been doing that since James Brown said it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's new to people who have been 2 and 4 and 1 or 3 or whatever the count is, their whole lives. Like, we take that for granted. Black people were always on the one,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's just like our natural, kind of rhythm. So I would just love to see us have more appreciation for that,
Mm.
and how we got to that, and not wait for somebody else to, like, be trying to catch our rhythm
Okay.
before we say it's cool.
Okay. So here's another question. If you had to compare your ideal relationship to an art form, painting, sculpture, music, what would it be and why?
Okay. You know what? I don't even know. I would say, so I'm trying to think of I would say maybe more like poetry.
Okay.
Because, like, the content, or like the words might be the same, but how
Mm-hmm.
it's expressed is going to always change. So, like, I might love you today, but how I love you tomorrow may be different. Might be different from how I loved you 10 years ago, because of, those circumstances. Kind of like, the way a song is even sung, or like somebody, how they may like recite a certain story that they always tell, or like a poem, or whatever the inflections are in the moment. It's kind of like love. So I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't say like a painting, because a painting, that's it until you paint over it,
Mm-hmm.
or a sculpture, you've got to break something off of it or add something to it.
Mm-hmm.
And love is not static. Relationships are not static in that
Mm.
way.
Okay. I like that. Okay. So one thing we focus on in the Tequila Tales
Hmm.
is communication.
Yeah.
How do you think art and relationships overlap when it comes to expressing what words can't?
Because we communicate in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we never just depend on words to express ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Me and Vernon can be in the same space and be like across a room, and I can look at him a certain way, and he knows I'm ready to go,
Okay.
or vice versa, you know.
Right, right.
So yeah, how it's expressed. Um, it's just always different, and just that connection that you have,
Mm.
between people. I mean, be it like a friend, your lover, or whatever. Like, you can just give somebody a look, or like a nod, or roll your eyes, or smile in a certain way, and that person that you're connected to, they know what that means.
Okay. Okay. And for my final question for you, if the Tequila Tales were turned into a piece of art, what do you think it would look like?
So I have a quick answer for this. So the image for the next one, kind of like that Marvin Gaye-esque album cover, that is to me quintessential Tequila Tales, because it's expression, it's movement, it's music, it's the culture. Like you can see that, you can see that anywhere. And you can instantly start singing one of those Marvin Gaye songs, right?
All right.
Same thing with Tequila Tales.
That was good. That was good. I like that. That was a solid that was a solid response. I like that. Anything else you want to share with the people before we close out about either you, the upcoming year for Onyx, or just in general as it relates to art?
So, one of the things that's like super important for us this year is to further the cause of giving artists of color a very strong platform here in the Valley. And we want to be the conduit for that. We want to be able to offer people that are serious about their art, like, and how I am. How I am. Not everybody is
Very
going
much so.
to hop up on the stage. Not everybody is going to be given the benefit of that platform. It takes a lot for us to do what we do. And we want to invest in people, but I want to invest in people that are serious about what they're doing, so that I can join their effort or support it in whatever ways that I can. So that's our push this year. Again, with all genres of art, but really helping to give voice to emerging artists, further established artists who are, like kind of there, and almost like, as an incubation for new creatives.
That's awesome. For those of you all that are with us, I have put a couple of links into the chat because it's important that people are not only familiar with not only the platform, but then how you can continue to connect with us. The first link was the Inner Circle. So one of the things that I always let people know, if you're here in Phoenix and you're watching this and you are not a part of the Inner Circle, I don't know what's going on. Okay. The Inner Circle is our text, our SMS, kind of group. And all it does for us is it gives us an ability to be able to connect with people in a much more direct fashion. Like, one of the most complicated things about doing anything nowadays is just being heard, right? I think that's one of the things that I love about Onyx Gallery, is the fact that you're giving visibility and you're providing a voice to individuals that would not have one otherwise, right? Like, do you have art on the walls, as incredible as it is? If it were not for you, a lot of these artists would not be in an actual establishment, so you give voice to people that are trying to be heard, right? People that have quality, people that have really been putting in the work, and what they are looking for is support, right? But not just, because people will tell you, oh, I'm coming through to support, but really what they coming through is to get a free ticket. They coming through to kind of, leech off of your resources, whatever. I literally had to talk to a friend the other day that was kind of going down that rabbit hole about someone else that they were kind of cool with, and they was like, yeah, I support them all the time. And I just had to kind of check them, like, okay, well, when you say support,
what does support look like?
What does support look like?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And not to check them, but because, and I think that even kind of harkens back to what you were saying earlier, right? Like, when it comes to our inability or our unwillingness sometimes to invest in the things that add value to our lives, right?
Yeah.
Like, I get it. The best things in life are free. So they say. One, not only are they not, but two, if they are, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't still add value back, right?
Yeah.
And your presence isn't enough sometimes, because it takes money to put things on. And I think that was also the part, and effort, right? And that was the part that I was getting at earlier when I was just talking about, like, I guess the intersection between art and commerce, and while you don't want to be corrupted by the money. You don't want to be controlled by the consumer. You still need the consumer. Otherwise,
how can you continue to
how can you
provide it?
continue, right?
Yeah.
Like then all of a sudden your art becomes a hobby. And some of your favorite artists, sometimes we be like, oh man, what happened to so and so and
Yeah.
so and so?
Yep.
Bro, they working a 9 to 5 right now because the people that love them so much
Right.
were not supporting them and realized that, you know what I'm saying? Now I get it, right? Like we all got Spotify, we all got whatever, and we all got tons of bills.
Mm-hmm.
But there are certain artists or there are certain movements that you really support and you know you love it. You know what I'm saying? You got them in your top 5 to 10% of things that you love. You need to be making an additional, step towards investing, because that's really what it is. It's an investment. It's not
investment.
Charity, right?
No.
It's not support. It's an investment. You are investing in their future. You're providing them with a landscape to continue to create. And, when you are creative, until you kind of hit that saturation point, you are kind of relying on, the early adopters, the people that see the vision before it becomes a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, once again, like that has not only been what that is what you and Vernon have been for so many people here in the Phoenix area. But I will like humbly admit it that you have been that for us, and you have allowed us to grow and to really define what the Tequila Tales is, not only in this area, but like our new iteration, because what we created in Chicago was beautiful, right? It really was. What we are doing now, I feel like, and I hate to sound cliche when I say this, but it's kingdom work at this point, right?
Yeah.
Like I see what's out there. I see the messages. I see, just where social media is. And, I was literally just talking to Casey about this earlier today, where I was just like, we've always known that we can pivot and we can do certain things to get more attention, because there are shorter routes or quicker routes to reach a particular destination if you want to take that route. But I was like, something in my spirit is letting me know that what we are doing, not only is it adding value to people in the here and now, it's one of those things where it's like it's needed. Like it is needed to have these spaces for people to have open and authentic communication. Even when we have fun sometimes, even when we get a little ratchet from here and there, like when I really look at the quality of content that is being produced, it is without question, it adds value. And even if it's a quiet voice in a room full of screaming people online, I feel like it's adding value, right? And we would not be able to do it if it were not for you and Vernon, and if it were not for Onyx Gallery. So that is why, like, as far as I'm concerned, like we are like partners in this mission, and that's why anytime that you call upon me, I'm front and center, and vice versa, right? Like, because I love everything that you are to this community.
It
is building, and it's one of those things where it's like our roots are running very deep right now, and it's like there will be a point where I'm not even going, well, no, hell with it. I will speak it into. There will be a point where it will be a household name.
Oh, I mean, 100%. I believe that. But I'll just say, just to add to what you were saying, one of the reasons that you have to kind of stick to your guns and what you're doing and what you are doing, and you can't just kind of like go for that quick dollar, that quick attention or whatever, because as a creative, you have a certain vision and there's a certain value attached to that for yourself that you're going to feel away if you don't hit it. I know for me, I don't like to half-ass, things. And when I don't execute like I know that I'm capable of, I feel away for months, and so for me, it's more important for me to be able to close the doors and feel like, okay, I did that, as opposed to, well, gave them, what was part of the contract.
Mhm.
There's
We
a
made some
difference.
money.
Exactly. And it's not even, it's not
Right.
even about that, because the way I can spend money,
Mhm.
that I
Right,
can't
right,
put
right.
the value there, as opposed
Mhm.
to how I feel about it when I think in my head, did I do my best?
Right. So yeah, so I say that to say that the journey thus far has been a beautiful one.
For sure.
Obstacles included, right?
Yeah.
That's a part of any
Learning
journey. It's
curves.
learning curves, right? And so
Hmm.
like I embrace all of it, and I really embrace 2025. 2025
Oh,
is
me
going to
too.
be exciting across the board. For those of you all that are in different cities, I've told you all in the past, man, we are coming to,
We
I
are
said
coming.
5, but it's 6 different cities. Chicago, you on deck first.
Right.
So February 13th is when Tequila Tales is happening in Chicago. I have not released a location yet, but just know it's a location
It's
that we're
gonna be.
comfortable with.
Oh
It's a
yeah.
location that we like. And,
So good.
and yeah, I'm really excited about it. If you're not a part of the inner circle, I've dropped that in the list. I've also dropped in the chat the link to our upcoming event here on January 16th, which is on the Good Foot. Now, I'm gonna give everybody a heads up now, because people like to act surprised when we have a good time. Okay.
Right.
Yes, sometimes we get deep, sometimes we get heavy, but on the Good Foot, we are going to start this year off right, and we're going to start the year off talking about positive things, talking about uplifting things, and talking about playful, fun things. Now, sometimes the conversation might, go into a
Veer off.
space, and I'm gonna let it, right? But I'm giving everybody the heads up to know it's going to be a different kind of vibe intentionally. So I don't want to hear none of that low vibrational nonsense, because we decided to have fun and launch this particular one off on a good foot, right? Because a couple of days later, we swear in Trump for the second time. I don't know how the hell we got here, but nonetheless, I want to make certain that me, my community, my family, the people that rock with us, that we got the right state of mind, the right spirit moving forward. And so I didn't want to start off on one of them heavy introspective.
Right. 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 Right.
Because Martin Luther King's birthday is in the same vicinity. I could have been like, let freedom ring.
Right. Right.
I could have got real. I was like,
But we gonna
the
keep it
my
light.
spirit was like, I don't want to. Nah, that ain't the energy I want to start the year off on. We got 4 more years to be in combat mode. Let's start the year off on the good foot. And so,
And can I say this?
yes,
Phoenix, please reserve your seat. Please reserve your seat.
And
the
listen,
last Tequila Tales,
and y'all better do
honey,
it now.
you better do it now,
Look, they was
because
buying them late, and I was up in
they
here
were.
and tables
Listen, we were
like,
trying to
okay.
find
Let's
seating for
cut that
people.
list off.
So get your seats.
Mhm.
There is not an infinite amount of
It is
seats
not.
to have. So go ahead, get your seats. Come in showing that, certain
Yes.
certain something, that
Yes.
little certain je ne sais quoi that y'all
Yes.
been showing up with. We love that.
Haven't they been?
Listen, Phoenix is beautiful.
Right.
Y'all been making me proud.
Phoenix is
Phoenix is
beautiful.
beautiful.
But I'm gonna just say, Onyx and Tequila Tales have been putting out a vibe that's been making people show up in a way
Yeah.
that lets me know, okay, they understand the assignment.
Yes.
And that makes me
People
feel
have
good,
been
man.
hitting.
That's motivating. That's motivating.
You ladies,
Yeah,
y'all, they be coming in here,
been looking good.
and
They been
these
looking
beautiful black men. Like,
yeah. Oh, and that's
Listen.
another thing. Because I've been telling y'all, and I was telling y'all the first year and some change, the men are coming.
they
It's
are.
gonna take some time, and they have been showing up. They've been showing up, and they've been
solid. Yeah, and they have solid, perspectives.
Yes.
And they're coming, and they're being very genuine.
Yes.
Which I am loving.
Me too.
I am loving it. They are representing.
They are.
They are representing.
They are.
So
it's not kumbaya.
It's
but
not.
it's also not, full on like combative
Yeah.
man versus woman.
Yeah,
Like,
because
nah,
there's a way to get your point across
It
without,
is,
you
it
know,
is.
all of that. And I think that you moderate that,
I appreciate that.
very well. You do.
And so does the environment, right? I think that
Yeah,
when they
it's
see the
conducive
aesthetic,
to it. Yeah. Oh,
they
yeah.
know this ain't, I ain't gonna name names, but
Yeah, but
they know what
get
this ain't.
your
Get your
secure
tickets,
your
man.
reservation.
Stop playing.
Secure your
I'm
reservation.
trying to tell them.
Yeah.
And finally, T3Ts, right? Y'all listen, the merch is active, and weekly we update the list. So we've got new additions. I just put up 3 new pieces in the last 2 days. So if you haven't checked it out, I will go ahead and click on T3Ts. It's actually kind of dope. I'm about to order it tonight so that I can wear it for next week, because it's pretty fly. I got a hoodie up now. We got hoodies now. So even though we say T3Ts, we got hoodies now. And look at it and tell me that shit don't look cool.
Let me get my order in.
But look, it is what it is. But listen, you guys, as always, I really appreciate, the continued support. And I appreciate the continued love, right? Like people that pop in, like a lot of times I'm getting a lot of DMs, people that are excited about coming to the events. And just even people that's reaching out with like questions, every time that you all share it with your friends, and such and so forth, make no mistake about it. Like, I think that sometimes people, when they see you operating at a level of efficiency, there's assumption that what you do don't or does not add value. And I'm here to let you know, not only is it recognized, it adds tremendous value. And I'm saying that at this stage, and I will continue to say that, right? Because we are nothing without the people that continue to rock with us, that continue 100%. To support us, that patronize it. Like, so don't think for a moment that either of us take it for granted. We really do. And we have conversations ad nauseum where we sing your high praises like we're doing right now. Like, it might have seemed like we were just bragging, like, no, honestly, we was giving y'all the credit. And we feel honored that you guys continue to show up and that you see the value in participating in a platform such as this, right? Because this is boutique-ish. This is not.
Oh, very much.
And that's why when I say it's not a panel discussion, I make it clear to say I'm not throwing shade when I say that. It's saying that this is about the people. I could put experts. I could put a bunch of influencers that all have millions of followers on the stage and then charge you all goo-gob the money to come to listen to them. But that's not what this is. This is community driven. This is what it looks like when you build community, right? And that's one of the reasons that what we built in Chicago, myself and Kathy, what we're doing here in Phoenix, we're going to continue to branch out, because I have a feeling, I have a gut feeling that there's other places that desire this kind of community driven, experience in their hometown. And so, I used to play around with it when I say I'm a vessel, but really I am a vessel, right? And I don't mind tapping into different cultures, tapping into different regions so that other people can experience what it is that we're creating. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I love you guys. And until the next time, you will see us very soon. Where we at? There we go.